How's it going, Andrew?
Hey, Matt. How you doing?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Cleaning any dog poop recently?
We're going to go back to that, huh? Yeah, no, that all got done.
So, how things going? How are you adjusting to being back to a lovely senior deacon?
It's weird. It's really weird. That's the only way I can put it. It's not as weird as if I was sitting on the sideline because I'm still kind of involved, right? But it is really weird after
no one's coming to you for answers anymore.
Right. Well, and after you give that much time and you give up a little part of yourself, right, in the process over the course of an entire year to then just be like, oh, that's not my job anymore is weird. It's just. Yeah, it's like something's missing. I'm not complaining about it, but it's like something's missing.
I can imagine it feels like you have moments where you're like, fuck, am I not doing my job right now?
Yep.
And then you're like, no, I am doing my job.
Right, exactly. And it's also just you're like, I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed doing it. So now, and I enjoy being senior deacon, but I really enjoyed sitting in the East, so now it's just kind of there's just a little piece of something missing, and I wouldn't trade my experience in the East for anything, and, it's just a little bit of an adjustment. You have to get used to, there's that little tidbit of ego in there, too, where you're not the
star of the show anymore.
Right, yeah, the spotlight's not on you anymore, so you're like, oh, this is different, so there's a little... for the most part, I have my ego pretty well in check. So it's the smaller tinge of everything, but that tinge exists, so.
Yeah, I can imagine that's a weird transition because also you were mentioning on the last episode, suddenly your phone's quiet.
Yeah.
Wait, do I need to respond
where
to
are all
someone?
the emails? Where are all the text messages?
I'm getting a lot of them. And then Jeff's getting even more.
Yep. It's an odd transition. It's an odd transition.
Yeah, I kind of thought that'd be kind of a weird one to go immediately because you don't even have reset time. You're just responsibility, switch.
Yep.
And you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, there was a week or so there, maybe a couple of weeks where I had a couple things trickle in hey, what about this? I'm not worshipful anymore.
Yep. Talk to the master.
Right.
Do you see a hat on this head? No. Oh, yeah. I'm having fun transitioning into the... I had a similar moment transitioning for the first time out of the kitchen.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That's an awkward one where, I still have people, asking me, hey, what happened to this? Where's this stuff? As this, I'm it's been a couple months. I don't know. You've just gotten so used to blaming me. Now it's someone else's job to know where stuff is. And, ideally, the junior warden should... when coming into his term, get things organized, and then those questions got to go to him. Especially the longer it goes, the less I'm I don't know what's going on in there, man.
Right.
Gonna have to look around.
I got in the kitchen for breakfast with Santa and Burns, and I was just I had to open up 5 drawers to find what I was looking for because I was just where is stuff? And it wasn't because it got moved. It was just because I didn't remember where stuff was anymore.
Well, and the transition issue for me was I would get a lot more pressure in the junior warden because there's so much stuff that people need. What's this? What's going on with this event? What's going on with that?
Right.
Whereas now it's now I'm getting asked different stuff.
Yep.
You're oh.
Welcome to being senior warden.
It's an interesting role so far, and I think as I've been sitting in it, I've started to get some understanding of why do we say that stuff in the ritual? What is this? Why is it described as the pillar of strength? Why is it so some of those things are starting to make sense.
Yep. They should.
Yep, but it's been fun. I mean, what I've been enjoying is it's fun being the master's right-hand man. That's kind of fun. Where I'm his little consigliere or whatever.
Yeah, right. Yep.
I'm his little enforcer going around trying to make sure that his will be done. But also
you're his counsel.
Yeah, it's a fun spot because so I like to compare masonry to pirate ships or just ships in general.
Yeah, you're the first mate.
Yep, and how the captain's job is to sail the ship, and he's got the map and he knows where they're going. He's big picture, right? And he relays his messages to the crew, and it's the first mate's job to make sure that the captain can focus on sailing and not focus on chasing people around to pull the mast or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so the first mate or the senior warden's a fun spot where the first mate's usually closer with the crew because he's not the one barking the orders, he's relaying them.
Yep.
And he's also the right-hand man of the master, so he sits in like the middle.
You're a day walker.
Yeah, it's like the pillar of strength. He sits in the middle being like, I will have my ear to the ground on the brothers, but also have the back of the master and support him. And so you kind of sit in this little middle spot, which is kind of like you're like a little mediator.
Yep.
It's fun.
It is an interesting chair. You learn a lot in that chair. So
yeah, I'm just realizing I need to remind my wife she needs to look into gavel options, and then I need to start looking at hats.
Oh, yeah. American Hat Makers is a good place to start looking.
I just don't know what style I want to do.
Yeah.
I think I want to do a top hat. I think I want to do classic.
There you go.
I don't like bowler hats.
Assuming you get elected.
Assuming I get elected. I mean, I have to get the hat anyways just to be prepared. I can't wait till the election to buy the hat.
Right, yeah. No.
Hope it has return policy.
Ooh, confident, aren't we?
Who knows? There's also this thing where it's like, what hat can I pull off? And when you're trying to do like a formal hat, you're like, none of them. And you're like, okay, sorry. Like, you're in a different time period with this thing on. You're like, yeah.
Yeah, some of them, yeah, you got to be able to see it on your head, right?
I kind of want to find a way, like, since the way I view masonry right now is modernity and tradition in like a unique ecosystem where like they meld in a way that the past and future are kind of put in the same space in harmony. I want to find a hat that like represents that, where it's like an old school kind of formal hat, but with like a more modern spin to it or something. It's kind of what you did.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't think I can pull off like a biker hat, so I have to. It's false advertising.
Should we get you a tricorn?
I did look at tricorns, but then it feels like you can get too silly.
There's actually a brother out at Waukesha Lodge that does leather working and makes tricorns.
See, I don't know if I'd want mine to be leather. I'd want...
They get warm. My hat was leather. They get warm. Don't do it.
Since I have gone down this road, I was looking at some where they'll have reenacting, like not like you don't want one that looks like a costume, like these you can look tacky quick. But I was seeing some like, I don't know if it's felt, but like nicer. I think they make hats out of felt, right?
Yeah.
Maybe, but it was like nicer, and it's like kind of like a big one that was on like a reenactment.
I mean,
like
they're
a
not
reenactment
like
supply website.
All felt. They have like a structure to them, and then there's felt over it, but.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't decided yet.
Yeah.
I would like to look like a pirate, though, speaking of that.
Good luck on your journey to find your hat.
That's going to be a good time. Anyway, speaking of melding modernity and tradition, today we're going to talk about Masonic traditions.
Woohoo!
I'm going to hit the music.
Loosen up your ties and roll up your sleeves. It's time for fellowship with Matt and Andrew. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are not necessarily the views and opinions of the Grand Lodge of Wisconsin or any other Grand Lodge or any appended body.
All right, so today I want to talk about traditions, and what spurred me on this idea was at our Robert Burns Table Lodge, past Grand Master Dave Ritchie did a speaking part. Why did I say speaking part? He did a speech.
He was our guest speaker.
He did a speaker. So he did a speaker talking about Robert Burns and about tradition and traditions in a lot of different ways and the importance of tradition. And it got me thinking, I was like, that would be something that I think is kind of cool about Masonry. And I thought it'd be something fun to talk about.
Oh, I agree. That's a good one.
So I wanted to talk about why is tradition so important, not only in your personal life, but in Masonry?
Ooh. Well, that is an interesting question. And okay, so I have been going to the same hunting property for 32 years. I have hunted there for 30 of them because at the time I started going up there when I was 10 to hang out with the boys and start learning a little bit about hunting. But at that time in Wisconsin, you couldn't actually start hunting until you were 12.
Got it.
They've since changed that rule, but yeah, that used to be the rule. You couldn't do the gun deer hunt until you were 12. Because you couldn't take hunter safety till you were 11, and then hopefully you turned 12 in time to... Right. So, and that's something that since I was 10 years old, I knew I would get to look forward to every year for, who knows, at 10 years old, you're not thinking you're still going to be going to the same place, doing the same thing on pretty much the same weekend, for the next 30 years of your life. But it gives me solace. That tradition gives me solace in the fact that I know that I'm going to get to go do that and have those experiences. And yeah, it's a little bit different every year, but I'm going to get to go do that every year. And it gives me that consistency and that mental place where I'm like, especially if life gets rough right around that time, I'm like, hunting's right around the corner. I'm going to get my break,
Well, and it also connects you to the past people who carried the tradition before you too,
right.
Which is kind of cool.
Well, yeah. And I mean, that's pretty much as long. We had the property a little bit longer than that, but yeah, both my grandfathers hunted there. My father still hunts there with me. My uncle used to hunt there with us. So.
Hunting camps of days of yore.
Oh, yeah. Got some good stories from those.
And what's interesting is I think people assume that a tradition has to be hundreds of years old to be a tradition. You can start traditions in one lifetime very easily. I feel like if you do something 3 times, the seed is planted of a tradition. I think after the 3rd time, you've committed that you're like, I'm going to keep doing this. Like, it's no longer like the first time is like, yeah, you did it once. That's fun. The second time, you're like, oh, could be a coincidence. The 3rd time, you're like, I see a seed being planted of a future tradition.
Yep. I see a pattern going on here that this is, we like doing this enough, or we like the symbolism of it, or whatever the circumstances may be. We like doing it enough that we've done it 3 times. So we'll probably do it a 4th.
Yeah.
And actually, I would argue that it started for us with Zoe with the 2nd time that we went to Wild Lights at the Milwaukee County Zoo.
Okay.
Now we've gone 2 years in a row. We know we'll be going again this year.
Yep.
Because that's just a really cool thing to go to.
Well, and it's interesting. So we were, and we'll talk about traditions in Masonry as well in a second here, but we were chatting online with worshipful brother Chad Kopensky. Mm-hmm. He's a brother he's in 2 jurisdictions. He's from the Grand Lodge of Ohio, but he's also a member of Oregon Lodge in Wisconsin. Yep. That's my understanding. And he was a district deputy out there and did education stuff. So he was chatting with us about the episode we did with Jim, and he was talking about how lodge traditions are similar to family traditions. And I think when you start to try to understand why the importance of tradition exists is when you start to look at your own family traditions and start to go how impactful it is on your family that you have these traditions you always do, you look forward to. There's consistency. It's a consistent touch point. It's something it connects you to, past generations of your family and stuff like that, or, people who have participated. It starts to make sense when you look at large traditions like in Masonry where they're spanning, hundreds of years. You start to go, oh, this is just a bigger version of something similar to that, but it's serving a similar function.
Right. Exactly. I mean, if you just look at the Burns dinner, because that's the most recent thing I can think of, that this was the 23rd annual Burns dinner. The Robert Burns dinner is a Lake Lodge tradition.
Yep. So while we're talking about that, what traditions do you think at our lodge are staple traditions that help define our lodge's culture?
The Burns dinner.
Yeah. So the
would be my big,
Yep, that's the pinnacle.
Yeah.
The cool thing is with especially when your lodge tradition is one that's connected to a larger fraternal tradition, is it's not only a tradition connecting you to generations of Masons within your lodge, it actually connects you to traditions for Masonry universal to a certain extent, depending on where that was done, which is in a lot of places. So for our listeners, the festive board or table lodge, traditionally the way we do it at Lake is there's a meal, we do ceremonial toasts, and that's an important tradition within the tradition that there's ritual in traditions always. We're going to go to the hunting camp. Maybe we're going to play cribbage. There ends up being consistency in all traditions. You're going to do the same things over and over to kind of ground you to all this stuff. And the cool thing is with the festive board tradition, the ritual that accompanies it is very much reinvigorating people about Masonry, where they're it's reminding people of their stuff. It's celebrating people. It's all this kind of good stuff. And so it almost invigorates a Mason's soul.
Right. Well, and I feel like we have a number of traditions at Lake Lodge, just even outside of events. Like, as is tradition at Lake Lodge, we'll now introduce past masters and visiting brethren.
Another fun tradition is the start of a tradition was that a couple of our past masters who are still around the lodge started having going to the pub after meetings. That became a tradition, but then we subdivided the tradition that the rounds are bought via the officer's line.
Yeah.
So it starts the master by the first round, then the junior warden. So like it starts going down the thing, and that's been something that's only been going for 3 or 4 years. But it starts to like build this like this nice like infrastructure.
Well, and I think that I actually think that's a really fun tradition to have, because I look forward to years of free drinks after I get out of the line.
Yeah, my tab was $100 last time I was there. I was like, dude, start saving now for the Masters year. If that was the second
I have
round.
told everybody to do that, and that is maybe another tradition that'll start. Is junior stewards will start putting $5 a week away specifically to offset what those later years are going to cost. You know, though, as much as that has become a tradition, I would say that this group in particular would, if that was unfeasible for somebody financially,
We just cover it.
we would just cover it, and it would, a past master would jump in and buy a round, or somebody down the line would, it's definitely not like a forced thing,
The challenge with that tradition is we used to not have as many people coming out with us.
You're right, yeah.
So you would have like 10 people, and you'd be like, yeah, I can easily buy a round.
Well, and we used to not, that used to be like after stateds, but now it's after stateds, after degrees, after special events, after.
Yeah, we might have to curtail that back eventually when we start having 50 people show up. You're like, wait, hold on.
Right.
Yep.
But getting back to that, at a lot of lodges do things differently, and I've always found it distinctly unique that Lake, the worshipful master, goes around and visits and introduces all the past masters and visiting brethren that are in attendance that night. And I love the fact that we start how we're going to tell people what we're doing with, as is tradition at Lake Lodge.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's a huge tradition that has been going on since, I don't even know when, because I've never asked anybody if that's something we've done for 150 years, or if that's something we've done for 50.
As far as I've heard, it's been at least 15, if not more. I mean, I know that Brad said that he would do it, and so it predates that time. So, I bet you've been going on for a while. And I know that Brad told me that they used to do the dates, which you brought back.
Yep.
You know what's been fun about being a Mason? So a lot of traditions that you'll hear about from past masters, or even brothers who moved away, they'll come back to be like, we used to do this around here and all this stuff.
Right.
Is trying to resurrect traditions that through, maybe just the ebbs and flows of lodges, when there was an ebb, it got dropped, is then locating these traditions and trying to bring them back.
Yeah, trying to resurrect them.
Like us trying to bring back music in lodge and stuff. Like you're trying to say, I can create a lot of new stuff, but there's a lot of stuff that should have never been uncreated, and we can bring it back.
Right, exactly. And, traditions are just important. They offer consistency, right, to a certain extent. You don't want 800 traditions, though, right? You want like a few, and I think we have our staple things. We're trying to bring back music. We, the worshipful master doing the introductions, the Burns dinner,
the wife buying the gavel.
Yep.
Well, there's big and small traditions too.
Right. Well, and even just our ladies. So for those who are listening who may not be aware, we do a public installation ceremony. Just to make this clear, our installation ceremony is a public opening. Public is invited. Anybody can come to it. We have our ladies sit in our chairs to invest us with our collars, right? So, that's not something that every lodge does. That's definitely a tradition here at Lake, much like your lady buying you your gavel when you get to the east. We have new ones coming up. Axe throwing is becoming a tradition. I don't even know. That's got to be going on 5 years.
Yeah, that sounds right.
4 or 5. Mm-hmm. I think we've been doing axe throwing now. So, that quickly became a tradition and something that's going to be going on always.
Well, and the key is that people are can be afraid if we make this a tradition, we'll never do it. But some traditions, they're I like to view traditions like trees. Some grow and they become a small tree, and then they fade away. Others become massive oaks that can never be moved. And the more ingrained the tradition is, the harder it is to have it removed, the more foundational it is. And, some traditions are meant to go for 5 or 6 years, and then some are meant to go for hundreds.
Right.
And you never know. And the thing is like, if your lodge doesn't have any good traditions, at one point, a tradition was just a crazy idea a guy had, or like 5 guys had. Yeah. And then, you'll never know who that guy's name was after a certain period of time, but who knows, like 100 years later, you could have somebody sitting there and they'd be like, I don't know, this is just something that we've been passed down.
This is just always the way we've done it. And I think having traditions also offers, how do I want to word this? People from the outside looking in that see you have traditions. Because, how many times do we sit there and offer an event we've maybe never even attended, and you're like, it's the 250th annual blah, blah, blah. And you're like, whoa, they've been doing that for 250 years? Yep. And there's just this sense of awe from people not even involved in it. And all of a sudden you go, I kind of want to be part of that,
Yep. I think that traditions also are useful in the fact that they kind of build a group's identity, because it's their shared experience that keeps being reinforced. We always talk about lodge culture, and every lodge is different in culture. I think part of that culture is their traditions, and larger traditions build sub-traditions that happen within that tradition, which makes it more diverse and interesting and complicated. And it's like when, do you remember the first time you went to your wife's met your wife's family and you had to go to one of their traditions, and you're like, I feel like I need to decode this lore of tradition.
There's a really fun one in Christmas at Olivia's family. If you are gifted a pair of underwear, you have to wear them on your head.
And you don't know where it came from, but here it is.
Yep. So, yeah. First time boyfriend at Christmas, of course.
Why wouldn't they?
Yeah, they had to. So,
but that's how they bring you into the fold, right? They're like, This is like an inside joke. Inside jokes are traditions to a certain extent,
right?
And it builds the connections between people. I think having shared traditions that when the outsider or the newbie comes in, they have to slowly learn what all these traditions are. Because that's what breathes life into the uniqueness of each group of people, is the traditions that they build. And so my Christmas tradition, since now that I have a kid, I've been putting a lot of effort trying to build my own to try to start planting the seeds now. And that's been fun too, because I think that building traditions is foundational to any group, and a family is a group, just like a lodge. It requires work. And I think that those traditions are what really bond people together.
Yeah. Well, no, and, new traditions can always pop up. It doesn't matter. We're using less Masonic examples than we probably should, but a handful of years ago, Olivia found this idea, and it's turned into a tradition with her family now for Christmas as well, where at Thanksgiving, we all draw a name out of a hat. You don't get to tell anybody else what your name is unless you got your own, and you buy that person a book for Christmas.
There you go. Yeah, and it's just I feel like those little things, those little traditions are what really, I think that's the artwork, it builds the beautiful picture.
Right.
Now, to bring it back to Masonry then, so we've talked about a couple of traditions that we do at Lake, and family traditions and why tradition is important. What traditions would you like to see revived more in Masonry, or specifically in our lodge? What would you like to see either revived or created?
I would. So the one I know of at Lake, after talking to a few past masters, unfortunately too late to try to bring it back this year, is our honors and awards night used to be a formal dinner. Everybody tuxes their suits, the whole 9 yards. You did your honors and awards night, and they used to apparently be more well attended than what we've been seeing at honors and awards night. We don't even do light snacks for honors and awards night anymore, and that is a tradition I would really like to see revived, because honors and awards night should kind of have that level of airiness to it.
Our honors and awards night needs something. It's lame right now.
Yep.
It needs more traditions tied to it, because we do it every year. So it's a tradition that we do honors and awards night, but it lacks the accoutrements. And I think doing something like that is a way to add some some actual coolness to it.
Right, exactly. And I think it used to be that they would get like a private room somewhere at like a restaurant to like do it. Like it wouldn't be like the junior warden stuck cooking for it type of deal. You know what I mean? But like we could even look at potentially doing it that way to, maybe ease up on the cost or whatever.
You could always cater into.
Yeah.
You know what I would like to see added to the honors and awards night? Like the Dundies.
Oh, yeah.
I've heard from some people they used to do a lot more silly made-up awards.
Oh, that would be fun.
That the master or whoever would make up, like, I'm not going to say like the stinkiest to go in the bathroom after award, like in the Dundies, but they would make up silly ones. Or like, so we have like the standard, like the high-end ones, right?
Right.
Those were traditionally harder to get, and they would happen less frequently. And then they would make up a bunch of silly ones.
Right.
Or like nice ones where they're like, you like went above and beyond, so I'm giving you this award for something.
And I tried to do a little bit of that this year with like the nicer ones and bring in some more stuff. I like the silly ones though. Like you need to go to the dry cleaner more often.
Yeah. The wrinkliest shirt award goes to. So I was looking up what are like some Masonic traditions that have been were really common in the craft throughout the world at various times. One of them was a roast where they would roast the outgoing master.
Oh, Waukesha actually does that.
That's a good idea. That seems so funny, but I think that if we didn't want to do a roast, adding a bit of silliness to one of those events, even if it is the honors and awards, so you like, the first half is the silly ones, then you go, all right, now we're going to the serious ones. I think it makes it, like if it's just like, all right, let's come out and let's read who got their 25th a year award and this guy, it needs something. And I can tell you even knew it needed something because when you're reading the awards, you're sitting there reading your notes being like, there's no fire behind it. And I think adding some heat, because it's like, if you're just reading off people's names and awards, like I think
struggled with that one. I was also struggling because I was like, man, my list is so short. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and
you can't fill a night.
I was like, and there was like not many people here. I was like, this deserves more than what we're giving it. And apparently we used to give it more than we do now.
Yep, and I think that's a good thing to revive. Because right now that event, like we were in and out in like 20 minutes, and you're like, why did we come out here? Like, it needs something. TLC,
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. I think so. The one that I really want to bring back that I know was traditionally done at our lodge was the Past Master Society, and I've been told the ritual's still around and a lot of lodges around.
I know exactly whose hands it's in because I got it out of somebody's hands and gave it to him.
Yep. And so like in the York Rite, we have the Past Master's degree, which is a degree put on, the virtual Past Master's degree, I should say, to put on because in the York Rite, to get the Royal Arch, you used to have to be a Past Master. And so that's like an homage to that. But so in a lot of jurisdictions, during installation, when the installation is done, before the master leaves to go to his reception, there's a quick degree the past masters put on for him, kind of inspiring and stuff. And that used to be a thing they would do here, and that would kind of be the job of that society, right? The past masters would get to, rub shoulders. So what I want to do, and I have been thinking about trying to implement during my year or maybe shortly after, is I want to set it up to be a 3-meeting-a-year event.
Right.
And so as the society, so you don't take too much people's time.
Right.
So you will meet once, we'll be at the Past Masters and Widows dinner.
Okay.
Once we'll be doing the degree during installation, and then there'll be one other meeting that would be a table lodge or like a candlelight dinner, tuxedos, just past masters and the current master who's considered a past master invited.
Right.
That would be catered in, and during that, before the meal, they would get there and practice the past master's degree that they're going to put on, and then they would go have a table lodge with wine and stuff and just be amongst themselves and be like an exclusive event, and that would be the 3. Is what my thought was.
I love your ambition on this, and I'm with you 100%, but I have to wait till after you're a past master we're going to have to clarify some stuff on that.
All right. Is there already some structure in place that
there is a structure in place, but a loose structure. You're overshooting what the structure I have is from how we did it previously.
Well, I'll improve upon it. It's fine. So, but I mean, and I haven't seen what that structure is. So when I see it, I can obviously make better ideas on how I'd want to do it. But I want that to come back because I think that's a good way to engage your past masters, give them a job, and also give them a special night that's just the past masters
No, I agree.
getting some some time with other past
Well, and
masters.
who doesn't want to go hang out with a bunch of grumpy past masters? I mean, we'll put all the harumphs in the same room and it'll be a good time, right?
But yeah, that's something that I'm interested in seeing. So I found some other interesting traditions.
Oh, boy.
And so my question to you is going to be, do you think this is a good idea to investigate or no? So in some jurisdictions and traditionally, the Tyler was also the lodge's enforcer. And so what that would mean is the Tyler would be charged to also enforce decorum and make sure everyone was properly dressed before entering a lodge. And if people were not properly dressed or in accordance, he would deny them admission.
Ooh. That's interesting. So you would actually give the Tyler the authority to deny people admission. Interesting.
So when you would arrive at a lodge, the front door just wouldn't be unlocked. There would be the Tyler waiting for you
Right.
to say like, hi. And if they needed to check dues cards, they would. And then they would say, but I mean, that depends if your lodge has a strict dress code. But if you did, that would be his job. Is to be like, nope, you can't come in unless you're dressed in such and such.
I like the idea of us dressing nicely for lodge and suits and stuff like that, but I'm of the opinion that I would never deny somebody the ability to come sit in lodge because they had to come straight from work and they're in dirty jeans and a t-shirt, you know.
Yeah, I know. It does seem old school. I do kind of like the idea of trying to find a way to give the Tyler more to do. I kind of like the idea of a doorman Tyler who is not more than the greeter, but is like, I know that there's some mix between like, oh no, he doesn't check the dues cards, so and so does, but I go, but he's the one at the door,
right,
who checks if they're duly and truly, you know, they're members. I would like to have them be the guy who's kind of doing like part security, like keeping an eye out, and then part checking stuff. I think that could be an interesting thing. Yeah,
I mean, I don't disagree with you. It's the Tyler's role has become largely ceremonial, I feel like.
But like, I think there's a middle ground to be like doing the Tyler's oath. That's something that we don't do anymore, really. And I think it's somewhere in the ritual book.
It is.
I think like the thing is even within the Tyler's responsibilities, they're so limited that they are still fairly ceremonial.
Yeah.
But I think it's kind of fun to have them being like, hey, you got to make sure like you're tiling this building. Like it's kind of like a fun role play to be like, I got my sword and I'm going to.
right, for sure. That one would be fun to explore. Not the dress code part, but giving the Tyler more.
Yep. I mean, if you were a traditional observance lodge and you had a strict dress code, it makes sense for the Tyler to do that.
Totally get it.
But that's a lodge culture thing.
Yep.
That brings it up, which I don't think we need to talk about. The common one was stricter dress codes, white gloves, stuff like that. Like, I think that has its place in lodges' cultures, and it's worth exploring for a lodge that likes that type of thing. But that's very much a tradition that can be cool for the lodge that it vibes with.
Yep, exactly.
The other ones that I saw in here was the lodge as a brotherhood, not just a meeting place. So they used to gather outside of lodge more, which is something we've been talking about a lot in Wisconsin Freemasonry, is getting out of the lodge.
And we do quite a bit as a lodge.
Yeah, and I think that, that's an interesting one that I think a lot of lodges are looking at is like, we can't just always be hiding in this building. You need to be going out into the world and doing stuff together as Masons.
Right.
And take the lodge on the road.
Well, I mean, I don't know about you, but a lot of the people I consider my better to best friends, I see more than once a month. So that means we're doing stuff outside of lodge. And if you're here for the brotherhood and the fellowship and, hanging out with good men and stuff, you should want to do it more than once a month.
I agree. Here's a challenging one.
Ooh.
Lodges traditionally being lit by candlelight. They would create they would keep the lights, even when lights came up, keep them dimmer than normal so that the light it was more of like a...
I'm sure there would probably be more candles in there. But yeah, I like it.
I do too.
I think it has its place more so in like a traditional observance lodge, but I like it.
See, now I've always said that you don't have to be a traditional observance lodge to do things that a traditional observance lodge does. I like it too, where it's like you don't have to go full kilter on. You're not either in or you're out on TO stuff. I feel like you can grab little pieces that fit.
No, I don't disagree with you there. I'm just I feel like that, Tux's white gloves, traditional observance, candlelit. Like, I think that totally has its place. For me personally, I'm looking at it going, I don't know if I would have been able to read my notes for my agenda of what I was going to be talking
you have
about.
a little candle next to you in your
candle
hand.
right up there, and then I'm dripping wax all over the place, and then it's just a disaster. Functionality wise, not great. For like a degree, super cool.
Yeah, I think there is. Man, we should think about that. Like we brought music back, where like that adds an element to the degree. So I know I can already hear the past master complain, but people are going to be falling asleep. And I'll be like, let them fall asleep. You guys fall asleep anyways. So, like, I think it'd be cool to, dim the, like, you don't have to turn the lights off.
Right.
Just dim them 50% for a degree so that even when, like, I think that especially for ritual, it puts everyone in a certain solemn mindset where, like, when the lights are dimmed during a degree, at those moments, you're like, wow, this feels, like, deep. I feel like maintaining dimmer lighting could be, like, kind of cool.
Yeah, it could be.
Dim the lights, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, it's something you can certainly explore. If elected.
The last one that I wanted to talk about that I've always been curious about is, so when I was watching a Masonic documentary, there was a city in Scotland that had always been a Masonic city. Like it has a long history of it.
Was that the one in Terra Masonica?
Yep. And so they do a lot more public processions and cornerstone ceremonies where when the master's made, they parade to the lodge from a certain point. So I want to talk about doing processions and lodges and parades. Like, what if during annual communication there was a small route that the Masons would parade to the opening ceremony or something?
I mean, that could definitely be cool. I mean, I feel like with the proximity most people stay at the hotel, that would be like fairly easy to coordinate. All right, we're all leaving the hotel, walking an extra couple of blocks around to make a big deal out of it, and heading over to the Wisconsin Masonic Center. Like, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, I don't feel like that would be difficult to do other than, I mean, we'd have to keep it on the sidewalks. Otherwise, you got to get PD involved and get the streets closed, and that costs money and da-da-da-da-da.
I know, but that's what I'm talking about, though. I'm talking about the pure procession, the closing of the streets, and making a spectacle of it so people are like, wow, this is impactful, important. But on the smaller level, if you want to do something easier, I'd say Mason's participation in parades.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know that like got revitalized for like a minute in the Milwaukee area. There was like a brief moment of, we're going to start doing parades again. And then it kind of like disappeared. And
I keep intending to do it. There was the year that I reached out, and it was like right after COVID, and it got canceled. And I was working with the coordinator to see if we could get a spot. And then I always remember when it's too late. Like I go, 4th of July is coming up. I should see. Oh, it's too late.
Yeah.
But that's one thing that I've been interested in more is Masons doing processions in full regalia, which I know you need dispensation for, but it's pretty easy to get when you have a good parade to do it for.
Right.
Just showing off, like, we're here, we're present, like, look at this. I do think doing it for an installation is also pretty awesome.
That would be,
pull it off.
That would be pretty cool. I think part of what goes into that, though, is you take a risk doing it. And the reason I say you take a risk doing it is because if you have 5 guys show up, that just doesn't send the right message. You know, when people see 5 guys walking down with a banner that says Wisconsin Freemasonry in a parade, and they're like, well, that's not a lot of Masons, you know.
But you have to start somewhere. I think that all because you can fall on your face, I think that's the building the tradition is if you always do it, you'll get more.
No, I get that. I'm just saying from an outsider looking in, visual perspective, they must be really hurting for members. There's only 5 guys here for the parade that they decided to do. That organization looks like it's dying.
To disagree with you, I've gone to many of the parade, and I've seen where there's just like 5 guys from the Lions Club, and they put a little work into it, making somebody do it, and they're just waving where they're like, oh, it wasn't when you make it less about the sheer number and more like you have something to show off, like they're sitting in a car just being like, yeah, we're here, like it's just an ad rolling by.
Right.
Like there is a way to do it with less people, to be like, hey, the rest are working in the tent over there, like, you know. I would like to get one of those, so people will have those crests that they'll bring on those parades, where the guy in the front has like a cool crest that they hang in their lodge. I'd like to get one of those to do parades with.
That could be fun.
And then it looks impactful. I think that parades are old-timey, and I've said it in the last one that they're maybe not the most effective way of getting yourself out there. But I think it kind of meets with that tradition. We're talking about a modernity with tradition.
Yeah.
Doing that still would be cool.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. I just think that should be a district tradition so that you can compile people.
So the last time that I went to a Masonic parade in West Dallas.
Yep, that's the last time I went to
West Dallas Lodge is the one that did it.
But
and
they
then
opened
reached
it up
out
to
to
the
the district.
district,
I
yeah.
think everyone should do that every time. Because there's not, unless we have 20 lodges doing it, then I understand being like, hey, we need the district to step in to consolidate us. But really, you're trying to show your local community near your lodge that you exist.
Right. Well, yeah, I agree. But then, okay, so West Dallas does a 4th of July parade. Greenfield does a 4th of July parade. Wauwatosa does a 4th of July parade. St. Francis does a 4th of July parade, I'm pretty sure.
Then if the district did it, they would try to find the biggest one of the Milwaukee area and try to be like, we're hitting all Milwaukee on this big one. Kind of thing.
Right. But you understand what I'm getting at there is you might end up overwhelming people by trying to divide them too much into different parades, or I'm not poo-pooing the idea, I'm trying to troubleshoot it with you at the same time. And then you might run into, I know when I was part of the Hog chapter, we used to do the Tosa parade and then book it straight over, and then we had an hour of downtime, and then we had to go start staging for the Greenfield parade. But a lot of times, depending where you are, these parades start staging 2 hours beforehand. Mm-hmm. So we'd be staging at 6 in the morning for Wauwatosa. It would go off at 8. Then we had downtime from 9 to 10, and from 10 to 12 we were waiting in the staging area for the Greenfield parade. So it can turn into a lot.
I mean, I think the key is that if we become inundated with these parades, then obviously something has to happen. But like you said, I haven't seen anything come out for one in a while.
No, I haven't either.
And so I think I might reach out again this year and see if we can do that. Because and if you do want to do it smaller, the easiest way is we just build a little float on a trailer. And we just
that's the easy way.
Build
a float.
That means you need less people.
Build a float is easy though.
No, you just get you get a trailer on the back of your car. You put some signage on the sides, and then you just wave. You could just have a wooden square and compass behind you and be like, ooh.
I'll stand there and wave as long as you're not driving.
I think it's a cool thing, though, and I think that there's something old-timey about it, and I think it's fun.
I agree. I think it would be really fun to do. I think we just have to look at the realistic limitations of it.
It'll be fine. What's the worst thing that happens?
Sorry, we just troubleshot that live on the podcast, but hopefully that gave you all some insight into
friendly
stuff.
Reminder to our listeners, if you have an idea you want to do, go after it right now. Even if you get poo-pooed, you're usually just trying to work it out. But so, yeah, that's the thing.
Oh, no, I wasn't trying to shoot down the idea. I was trying to rationally discuss, through the problems. You know how I do that. We do this all the time. And I think that's something that people need to realize. Just because you bring up an idea, and this is going off tradition, but I feel like it's valid to say we're following the rabbit hole. If you bring up an idea and somebody comes back with, here are potential issues with that idea. They're not saying they don't want to do it. They're just saying we have to look at this realistically, and here are potential problems, and how are we going to overcome them?
Yep, I get that. Yep. Cool. But yeah, traditions are important.
Very.
And, I really want to hear from our listeners on what kind of cool traditions you guys are doing in your lodges. So please reach out or comment on social media, because I know that there's a lot of very interesting traditions. And the more I've traveled, the more I've heard about or seen them. And they're all what gives a lodge its character. So
For sure. And as another note for some listener engagement, please, as we haven't done it in a few episodes now, if you miss news and events, let us know. We need to hear from you as to whether you liked that segment or not.
We are taking silence as you didn't make it this far. So if you didn't make it this far, you didn't make it to the news and events.
Or we're taking your silence as you're fine with it being gone.
Yep. So. Cool. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in, and follow us on socials, all that good stuff. And I'll talk to you next time.
Email us at timeforfellowship@gmail.com and have a great day.
Bye.